Happy Thursday, folks. Hope you're doing well. What night it was last night, right? Debate was interesting. There's some good moments. It was great hanging out with you live on YouTube. It was a lot of fun. Looking forward to doing that again with you tonight for the English debates. But those who watched and you heard me, there were some interesting moments and banter at various points, but quite frankly, it got to kind of be a little dull. It was like, okay, nothing really inflammatory happened. No real punches were really thrown as much as the media would like to believe there was. The only thing that really came through was Jagmeet Singh acting out of pure desperation, hoping somebody somewhere would listen to him and throwing out lies. That was one thing I discussed with Reg afterwards. I was stunned, but not really, by Jagmeet's behavior. He wasn't just lying about Poilievre. He lied about Carney, lied about Blanchette. He lied about everybody, just hoping somebody somewhere would listen to him and his Chihuahua self. That's the thing with Jagmeet Singh. He sold out his party, sold out the people of Canada, and in the process sold out his soul, and now he's reaping the repercussions for doing so, and he's not liking any of it. The debate aside, what was really caught the headlines was the questions that came afterwards and the pearl clutch that was happening from the CBCs and the mainstream media. Oh, independent media is getting a voice? That can't be allowed. This is ridiculous. This is a stain on the journalistic standards of Canada. That was the mentality. And then we're going to discuss, and as well, their fact checks that were not really fact checks. The narrative ended up becoming more about the battle between the mainstream and the independent media. And we're going to discuss all of that today, in addition to what you can expect tonight. So we're looking forward to it. But first, please take the time to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps. The liking really expands the reach, expands the voice, and helps people see the other side of the aisle and other side of what is happening on what is going on in this country. Please do so. Share it on your Facebook. I know the boomers are on Facebook these days. Feel free to share it there. Like it, share it, subscribe it. Love to see it. Let's get into the story, shall we? So first off, we're going to talk about the Century Initiative. You know, the organization that we're going to try and get 100 million people to Canada by 2100. No, not by raising birth rates. No, by pure immigration. That was their goal. That's what they're going after. And that was brought up in last night's debate. And CBC wanted to take some time to fact check the notion that Carney supports the Century Initiative.
Check team was also watching. So as we watched that debate, lots of things were said, and the CBC News fact check team was also watching very carefully. Jonathan Gatehouse is joining us now to talk about what it was that caught that team's attention. So Jonathan, we heard one figure in particular that may have made viewers sit up and take notice. It was about Canada's future population. So just to remind people, here's what Pierre Poilievre said.
And I also have to say that I reject the Century Initiative, which is a Liberal policy to balloon Canada's population to 100 million people. That's extreme.
So do the Liberals, Jonathan, have a plan to increase Canada's population to 100 million?
The short answer is no. That number comes from a 2019 report from a nonprofit group called the Century Initiative, who are arguing that Canada needs to hit the 100 million mark by the year 2100 in order to supercharge the economy. It's not a Liberal policy. Carney has attended Century Initiative events in the past, and he recently appointed the group's co-founder to his Council of Advisors on Canada-US relations, but Carney has never indicated that he supports the 100 million figure.
So there's your fact check for you. Yeah, there is a group that exists, and they came out in 2019. This is their plan. This is what they want to do. Carney has spoken at their events. Carney did appoint the chair to his advising team, and but there's no it's not really a policy. And this is the issue with fact checking. This is how it works. This is why you have to look into every fact check that you will ever come across, because this is the game that they play. Poilievre clearly saying that you're getting a little cozy with the Century Initiative, and you have proven through your policies in the past that is something you want to do. Look at what happened to our immigration system over the past 4 years. And so he brings it up, and they say, well, fact check, the Century Initiative isn't a Liberal policy, it's a separate entity's policy, even though the Liberals have welcomed their policies with open arms and brought them in as a part of their platform. This is how the game is played. This is what they do. They say there's a story, an arson story, and a man showed up, 26 years of age, had a black coat on, and set fire to someone's home. News comes on the scene, everything is burned up, and this is what they report. There was a man by the age of 24 years old who had a blue coat on who burned down the House. CBC would come onto that and fact check that, saying, no. The short answer is no, that didn't happen. Man of 26 and had a black coat on, not a blue coat. That is how the fact checking the CBC operates in the mainstream. That's what they do. All the other things around it were true, but just this one specific detail, technically a little inaccurate, even though it had no pertinent issue on the story itself. That is how these people operate. That is what they do. If you want to be reminded, Century Initiative's website says, with the Globe and Mail, we are bringing experts and leaders together for a hybrid event to discuss the solutions, partnerships, and policies for the next generation of housing and infrastructure in Canada. The event will take place, but here are the confirmed speakers to date: Mark Carney and Mark Wiseman. The two Marks, love to see it, all under the Century Initiative banner. But no, it's not a Liberal policy, technically, even though they just have the chair of this organization advising their prime minister. Yeah. That is how this game works. And that's why you have to keep an eye out for the details, because this is how they try to obscure the truth and obscure the reality around it. This is how it works. CBC's upset that independent media had a chance to ask questions, had a chance to have a different voice at the table and ask the people who want to have impact on policy in this country or be a prime minister in this country. Yes, I'm talking about you, Blanchet. You're not. I don't know why you're on the stage, but I digress. But CBC's upset that there is someone who's not a part of the approved group in this country, approved social circles in this country, who get to ask questions of those who are vying to be prime minister.
I have to sort of address the elephant in the room. How are these people chosen to answer these questions? And I don't know if either one of you have an answer for that, but I think there will be people at home saying, some of these seem like odd questions. Some of them aren't getting answered. How come we've heard so often from this one particular outlet? Any idea what's going on there?
There's three right-wing, very right-wing media, we can call them media, websites that are present in there. They get in line to ask a question like anybody else. Their accreditation has been approved by the Commission of Debates, and so they get the right to stand in line and ask a question that they choose to ask. In this case, you saw Mr. Singh, and this has been his position for some time, to refuse to answer questions. Rebel News in particular traffics in misinformation, facts, lack of facts, and as you heard in that question, which was woven with some truth and some things that weren't true. Yes, there have been burnings of Christian Catholic churches. Yes, there have been remains of Indigenous children found in various places around the country, which she misrepresented. We'll see if Mr. Poilievre gets any questions from right-wing organizations. I would suspect no.
Okay.
Well, and we know that she ended up lying about that as well. Yes, they did ask Poilievre some questions. This is how they work. This is the system. If it's not them who's doing it and someone else is doing the same thing they're doing, that's not allowed. That is not allowed. And that was the question people kept bringing up, is how is this even happening? Well, let's take you back to 2021. Remember the vendetta that Justin Trudeau looked to exact on the Rebel News organization. Well, making sure they barred Rebel News from all the events around the election, being able to bar them from asking questions to Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, and those guys. And, well, Rebel News took them to court, and they won. And that's what happened back in 2021. A federal judge ordered the Leaders Debates Commission to permit writers from Rebel News Network to fully cover this week's 2 official televised Leaders Debates. The ruling means reporters from Rebel News Network will be accredited to attend Wednesday's French language and Thursday's English language contest between the major party leaders. The ruling came after Rebel News Network was granted an emergency hearing Tuesday after the commission denied 11 of its employees the credentials needed to join the event and post-debate questions of the leaders. Justice Elizabeth Hennigan issued the written order on Wednesday after presiding over 2.5 hours of oral arguments on Tuesday from lawyers representing Rebel Media and the commission and reviewing thousands of pages of documents. Hennigan wrote the Rebel Media has satisfied the test for interlocutory mandatory injunction. In her one-page order, Hennigan wrote that the commission is to grant Rebel News Network Limited the media accreditation required to permit 1 journalist to participate in person and 10 journalists to participate virtually. And then this was back in 2021. Now we're seeing it full throttle here in 2025 with True North being allowed to enter the fray. So people, even on the right wing, were just like, whoa, Rebel News is coming in hot here. What's going on? And this is why. Because Rebel News took the Leaders Debate Commission to court and won back in 2021. And now we're seeing the fruits of that here in 2025. And it's not like, this is what's interesting. They're acting as if Rebel News and others came in asking the most ludicrous questions that had no basis in reality. That is what they're upset about. That's what they made it sound like to the regular viewer. And then you listen to the questions, it's like, you cannot like the questions, but these are questions people have had and have been going around in debate and also around the family table over the past 4 years that haven't been addressed in the selection, weren't addressed in the debate. And that's why they're asking them, oh, why they're asking questions that weren't involved in the debate? Well, it's because we know CBC, Radio Canada in this case, was trying to drive a narrative, and you could tell it throughout the debate. And 2 segments on Trump, 0 on China, and then went on to talk about other topics, driving a specific agenda to the viewer. We'll see if that happens tonight in the English debate. I reckon it will happen. But the Rebel News, the World, independent media, we're asking questions that people have been having, and where the MSM hasn't been doing their job and not showing the courage to ask themselves. And just for kicks and giggles, we'll go through the 5 questions. I'm just going to play the questions, not going to play the answer for the sake of time, but you tell me if you feel like these were questions that were based in reality or questions that are just totally off the rocker, as if my Auntie Luna was asking a question like, why is the Liberal Party turning my dog gay? It's not like it was anything like that, but that's what they try to make it sound like. We'll play it out for you guys.
Your entire campaign does seem to be predicated on putting you in the front and hiding the people that stood in lockstep with Justin Trudeau for the last 10 years. You're kind of hoping that Canadians won't connect the dots, that the people standing behind you in your caucus walked in lockstep with them. Regardless of what you say right now, Stephen Guilbeault made the carbon taxes life work. The man that moved Paul Bernardo from a maximum security prison is now your chief of staff. I'm wondering how you reconcile this and how you can trust their judgment when they thought those ideas were good ideas.
1941, a pipeline has brought oil from Portland, Maine to Montreal. Over the years, it has brought hundreds of millions of barrels of oil, much of it from OPEC dictatorships. Why have you never, not even once, opposed OPEC conflict oil being imported through an aging pipeline? Why do you prefer OPEC conflict oil over Alberta ethical oil?
That's question number 2.
Not allowed to go back to India because your political opinions have been judged to be unacceptable. And yet in Canada, you support censorship of things that you consider to be unacceptable, especially via online censorship. You even refuse to respond to questions with journalists that you disagree with, like you have just said so. So I assume that according to you, we should be punished in one way or another. So how are you any different than authoritarian politicians that you would imprison for their ideas?
And Jagmeet went on to refuse to answer that question, of course.
If you thought my friend's question was odd, you're going to love this one.
I'm glad you self-assessed that. Okay.
How many genders are there?
In terms of sex, there are 2. Thank you.
My follow-up question then, do you believe that women, biological women, have the right to their own spaces, their own sports, their own change rooms, their own prisons, their own homeless shelters?
And then last one.
Your party takes pride in standing against hate such as white supremacy, Islamophobia, and online hate speech. Yet you stay silent about ongoing attacks against Christians, even after Conservative MP Jamil Javani's order paper question revealed that over 200 churches have been targeted by arson and vandalism since claims of remains being discovered at former residential schools swept the nation in 2021. These claims have been disproven by bands that excavated and remain unproven by those that have not. Will you condemn the rise in acts of hate against Christians today and explain what your party will do moving forward to keep Christians safe from hate in Canada?
So I'll leave it at that for you, the viewer, to kind of digest. Are those questions you are so free to not like the questions. However, these are questions that have come up in the past 4 years in this nation because of how Trudeau decided to govern. So do you feel like there's a leg to stand on, or do you think these journalists are making up an alternative reality and trying to pin it on these candidates? You tell me. CBC, especially in this 30-second clip, is given that vibe that that's what they think.
Post-debate in those scrums, what did you hear from those scrums?
The post-debate scrums were dominated by right-wing media groups who flooded leaders with questions on topics unrelated to the debate. One did ask Carney if he felt Trudeau was a good prime minister. Carney said that he was and that they have shared values, including taking care of Canadians, reconciliation and equality. But
they were so offended that someone is bringing in a different side of the conversation that the mainstream media has been trying to deny for so long now because they've been able to control it for a long time. That's why they hate shows like mine, shows like Jasmine's, Moose on the Loose, and so on, because we are discussing and bringing these things to the forefront. They hate us. That's kind of how this works. They see us as leeches in the industry, and we see them as, you guys suck at your jobs. And that is the tension between the mainstream and the independent media. And this is the frustrating thing from the independent media side, is these questions are asked in a calm way, in a professional way. Do they cause tension? Yes. That's what the media is supposed to do. And make sure they hold the leaders to account for things that they've said in the past and the beliefs that they've held to. So that we saw those 4 or 5 questions was not the right way to approach it, according to the mainstream media, the CBCs of the world. Yet acting like this to Poilievre, which is something Jasmine brought back to the forefront, and them acting like this, well, this is totally fine, and the way they berate Poilievre a couple of years ago.
I appreciate it. Appreciate your presence here today. Before I begin, let me just say that thank you very much. I'm being heckled here by thank you very much for your congratulations. Thank you very much for your questions. I'm going to begin my remarks now.
But will you take some questions afterwards?
Justin Trudeau is out of touch, and Canadians are out of money. The cost of government is driving up the cost of living. $500 billion of inflationary deficits have bid up the cost of the goods we buy and the interest that Canadians pay. The cost for workers and businesses to produce the goods that we buy. On top of that, Trudeau proposes yet more spending to bid up costs.
And this reporter goes on to berate Poilievre for the next minute on these issues. But that's seen as professional. That is seen as acceptable. What you saw last night, the post-debate questions, that was over the line. This is the world we're currently living in, folks. We are literally engaging in an information war before our very eyes. And we are pressing on the establishment, and they're getting very, very uncomfortable. And that is a welcome sight to see. But we have to keep pushing forward on it until we're able to break it, reshape it, so that it actually serves the regular Canadian in their everyday lives. And so as we set our sights on the English debate tonight, the moderator was being questioned on CBC. And this is what his goal is tonight. And we'll see if he's able to accomplish that goal.
How do you see your role as moderator? What's a good moderator? You must be it, because this is time 9. This is the 9th time.
Mark Bulgutch, who was the executive producer of the first debate I ever worked on, which was in 2004, the lead up to the 2004 election, said to me, "You like hockey, right?" I said, "Duh." He said, "You know the best refereed games, right?" I said, "What are you getting at, Mark?" He said, "You pick up the paper the next day, you read the account of the game, and the referee's name is nowhere to be found." That's what I'm going for. It's not about me tonight. It's their show. My job is to enforce the rules, make sure everybody gets equitable time, make sure the viewers have an opportunity to hear them speak. In other words, can't have all 4 of them yelling at each other all at once. But really, tomorrow, if everything goes well, I won't see my name anywhere, and it'll be about them.
I accept that as a honorable answer. Let's hope he's able to stick to it. Because what I don't want to see is candidates prematurely cut off by other candidates. We saw that quite a bit last night, where Poilievre was trying to answer questions and Jagmeet kept trying to cut him off, and nothing was really done about that. And I don't want to see that again tonight. I want to see a good, solid debate. This is the issue. I said at the end of last night, China was brought up once about how we give them foreign aid. But the one thing that wasn't discussed last night was the Liberal Party of Canada's connection to China and China's involvement in our election processes here in this country and the foreign interference that's actually happening. That is the issue that I want to see brought up tonight. And I hope Poilievre goes forward and tries to bring it to the forefront. So we'll see how it goes. But anyways, we'll see you tonight. Myself and Reg will actually be here, and we'll make sure he puts in the double time to make up for last night. But we love you. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.